Stephen Badylak. Es profesor en el Departamento de Cirugía, subdirector del Instituto McGowan de Medicina Regenerativa y director del Centro de Preingeniería Clínica de Tejido en el seno del instituto. El principal objetivo del laboratorio del Dr. Badylak es el desarrollo de estrategias de medicina regenerativa de tejidos y órganos de reemplazo. El uso de mamíferos matriz extracelular o sus derivados como un modelo inductivo para la remodelación constructiva de los tejidos es un tema común de la mayoría de las actividades de investigación. Badylak tiene más de 40 patentes en Estados Unidos y 200 en todo el mundo. Es autor de más de 180 publicaciones científicas y 12 capítulos de libros.
Bienvenidos a un programa más de Dialogando con la Ciudad de las Ideas. Stephen Badylak, tuvimos el honor de entrevistarlo en Maine, y es un personaje que ha dedicado a la investigación. Ha sido provocador, mucha gente lo ha cuestionado porque para algunos él ha jugado a Dios. Primero veterinario y después médico de los seres humanos, se ha dedicado a investigar y por supuesto a investigar cómo poder transferir determinados órganos de un ser a otro, pues para vivir más, para no envejecer y para cambiar de alguna manera a lo mejor el código genético para el cual predeterminadamente fuimos concebidos. Es un personaje que ha registrado más de 200 patentes, uno de los investigadores y médicos que en la ciencia más reconocimientos y gran prestigio han logrado. Por supuesto, alguien que nos ha hecho creer que no debemos de creer todo lo que pensamos. Ojalá gocen ustedes esta entrevista de la ciencia de vanguardia, de la ciencia del futuro en el presente de Proyecto 40. Bienvenidos a un programa más de la Ciudad de las Ideas. Estamos en este bellísimo lugar en Maine, al noreste de Estados Unidos, y bueno, con un científico de primer nivel que ha patentado más de 200 inventos, y es cuando realmente las acciones son ejecutables. Es el tipo de ideas que realmente nos ocupan porque terminan siendo exitosas y transformando a la humanidad, y sobre todo en un campo que tiene que ver con el de la salud. Es Stephen, y es un honor tenerlo ahí. Stephen, it's really a pleasure to have this talk with you, and thank you for let us interview you for Idea City.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm happy to be here.
With your own words, how would you describe yourself? Who are you?
Oh, that's a tough question.
I know. Well, if
ask
we
me
could start
something
with
in science.
What you have done, what are you doing, and then we will talk about yourself.
Yeah. Well, no, I'll be happy to. I'm a different type of a trained bird. The route I took to get to where I am is very non-traditional. I began as a veterinarian.
Really?
And practiced for a couple
now
of
I
years.
understand why you took the cells of the pigs. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, that's okay. And I realized that it was going to be difficult to answer all my questions in the veterinary community. So I went back to school and I got a PhD in pathology, and then went on to medical school and got my MD, and then I treated human patients for about 15 years, and now I'm totally in research. But that background I think is important because it gives me a different perspective on the problems. I can look at it from comparative pathology, you know, how does this disease situation that occurs in man, are there any animal equivalents of it? And you get clues about how things work by understanding across all species. So I think it gives me a little bit of an advantage.
Absolutely. I think you're the first person I know with this background. There are not very much.
Well, there's a couple of us.
Could you tell us a little bit about, we know that you have discovered more than 200 innovation things for medicine and absolutely related to mitigate important disease. But if you could explain us and elaborate in some of them and how have changed the life of many people.
Yes, well, we've been very lucky. We've actually started out in a purely serendipitous way about 20 years ago, where we did an experiment that shouldn't have worked. And we replaced one body part with another. We took a piece of intestine and we replaced a blood vessel, the aorta, with the intestine. And
you were like
You didn't have anything to do and you say, well, why we don't try this?
Well, we were working on a different project and looking for a way to get blood from one spot to another and not have to use synthetic materials. And to our surprise, what happened was that the intestine over several months began to look exactly like a blood vessel. Had the types of cells that a blood vessel has, and was lined by the endothelium that doesn't let blood clot. And so basically intestine turned into blood vessel. And that sort of launched us into a whole series of questions. Why does this happen? What part of the intestine was making it work? And then why does it work? And so I've been spending the last 20 years trying to figure that out. So.
And so far, besides that important discovery and that you have been working with, what implications it have happened in terms of side effects for the research of medicine?
Well, we were again very lucky, because in the first couple of years when we started asking the question of, well, let me back up a step. The key discovery was that it was the extracellular matrix portion of the intestine. Extracellular matrix is that material that sits between the cells of our body. That doesn't look like there's a lot of it there, but there actually is. And that matrix is full of information, and it tells the cells what to do. And we learned how to harvest it. We learned how to take it out of any tissue. And once we did that, that was the key, because now we attracted some industry partners that helped us commercialize it. We basically took a biologic material, got the FDA to say, yes, this is the same as a medical device, a surgical device.
How long it took you, for example?
Well, the first patient wasn't treated until 1999, and the experiment that I was talking about a few minutes ago was 1986. So 13 years to get to the first patient. But by then, we'd learned a lot. And now we're very lucky, because about 2 million patients have been treated in one way or another with these different forms of extracellular
2
matrix.
million people have been treated. Thank you for your research. Thanks for your research. I mean, that's when ideas really matter.
Yeah.
And I was reading that you have more than 200 patents. Are all related to these things?
Most of them are related to these different matrices. How are they made? Where do they come from? What are the applications that they can have? How do you combine them with other medical devices that we know about to improve the practice of medicine? And our research in the past 6-7 years has really shifted much more towards truly a regenerative medicine approach. Right now I'm at the McGowan Institute for Regenerative Medicine in Pittsburgh. The field of regenerative medicine exists because we're not happy with the way certain diseases are treated with the standard of care. If you tear your rotator cuff in your shoulder, for example, there's no replacement material for that cuff. If a surgeon cannot sew it back together, then you have a problem. You know, when you have a heart attack and you get scar tissue replacing your heart, that scar tissue doesn't go away. You have to learn to live with what's left of your heart. And so what we say is that's not good enough. We need to learn how to regenerate or regrow those body parts and solve this problem in a different way.
Actually, well, the main reason for the interview was going to actually be devoted to this regenerating thing of the body. We have a guest in 2008 for Idea City, because as I mentioned to you, we'd love to have you in 2009 to the festivity. And in 2008, there's a doctor that mentioned that, well, the great disease of the humanity today is that you get old. My question is, your medicine could, we're talking about a muscle or a tissue or whatever, but in the long run, can we actually make us live much more years because we're regenerating and we could grow not only up but older in many ways?
Yeah, well, I think that would be an effect of what happens, but you know, there are limits. You know, right now we're living 10 years longer than we did 50 years ago.
Or more. Yes.
Yeah, and that's all because we know how to take care of disease better, we know how to detect disease better. But I'm not sure we want to live forever, do we? I mean, there are problems.
That's a big question.
Yeah, and well, I think the bigger question is quality of life. I mean, there are limits to anything, right? Mm-hmm. And so our goal isn't to necessarily make people live forever, but to make the time that they have here the best, as good as possible, so that you're not debilitated by kidney disease or liver disease or heart disease, these sorts of things, so that you can live your life to the fullest, and then when it's over, right?
Sure.
You know, that's the way it is.
What has been like the process to start to think in another way? We have this quote, don't believe everything you think. To start to think differently, and the approach that you gave to medicine is very differently, and I'm sure a lot of things has to do because of your background, that you have another perspective.
In the States, the way we practice medicine is very regimented. You know, physicians go through 10, 12, 15 years of training, learning how to treat a disease in a certain way. And in fact, then there are rules that say if you try to go outside of that, you might get in trouble. And so it's difficult to change this way of thinking. But if we're going to solve some of these problems, we are going to have to do that, because traditional methods of treating things like diabetes, you know, haven't changed in 25 years. You know, even though we're making advances in heart disease and we're better at transplanting hearts, you know, there are limits. All of the advances in the past 100 years have been in one of three places. We either we've learned how to control bleeding, so that when people get hurt, they don't bleed to death. We've done that pretty good in the last 100 years. We've learned how to make some better medicines so that we can control anti-inflammatories. You get a cold, you don't get stuffed up so much. And we can handle that stuff pretty good, better antibiotics. And thirdly, we do surgery better. We bring the parts better, but the fundamental processes of healing haven't changed. We don't, so, and from our perspective in regenerative medicine, what we would say is, you know, maybe those processes that the body goes through as adult humans, where we end up healing these broken parts by scar tissue together. The surgeons bring them together, and then the body forms a little scar between them and holds them together. Maybe we can do this a different way. Maybe we could change the way an adult thinks that his body should heal to more like what it was when he was in the womb as a fetus, or maybe like a salamander who, when he gets his arm cut off, he just grows it back. He doesn't just heal it. And now we have those genes, that information in our body, and if we can think about that as a potential way of treating disease, it opens up a whole new, you know, arena of where we can go. So instead of your broken leg, or your if you get in a fall off your motorcycle and you get a leg so bad that they're thinking about amputating it, instead of doing that, one says, well, okay, this one we can't fix, so we're going to regrow it. Or maybe in diabetes, instead of giving insulin every day, we regrow those cells that create the natural insulin in the body. It's a whole different way of thinking about it.
When you were talking, you mentioned that sometimes, well, not sometimes, most of the times they teach you, well, after 15 years you have to go this way,
right,
and be careful not to do it because you could get in trouble.
Right.
That's to shift paradigms. That's really to take risks, and that's really, and much more in a country like the States, where if you have trouble means also insurance policy issues, suits, lawyers, whatever. Besides the medical community, that the research, the academic world, where they don't want to learn new ways to do things. Could you tell us a little bit how have you lived this at the beginning, at least, how difficult it was for the medical community to show them that there was another way to fix problems?
Right. Well, I can give you some very real life examples of this, and it's not by any means over.
Sure.
So this is true. This is not fiction. So let's say that we can give you a device, a piece of this matrix material, and you have a torn tendon in your leg, like in the back of your heel, that Achilles tendon, and you Now, normally surgeons would say, we have to pull this together, we have to put you in a cast, let the heel gradually come back, and do your rehabilitation, and hopefully at the end you've got something strong enough that you can walk reasonably normally. If that injury is pretty bad, it's very difficult to get back to normal. So we give you this device and say, let's put this device in there, and instead of hoping that the tendon heals together by scar tissue, this device will be put in there, and it's only temporary. It sends signals to the body to say, hey, we need some cells over here that can turn into different types of tissues, stem cells. It recruits them to the site. Then it says we need blood vessels to support the growing cell mass, and we form a new tendon tissue. Now that's pretty much what happens. But in that process, everything shifts from what the clinician is used to thinking about. So when they put this device in, for the first couple of weeks, the cells all come and accumulate, which means you get swelling. And then the new blood vessels come in, and that means you get redness.
Okay.
And because there's more blood in there. Now the patient doesn't hurt. It's just swollen and red. To a physician who's trained for all these years, that means infection. So the patient comes back in 3 weeks after surgery when they should have their sutures out and everything should be getting along fine, and their patient instead has redness and swelling. They get worried. And in fact, if they don't now work this up as a patient, which means costs, I have to run 15 different tests to rule out what you have. And if I don't do those, my colleagues are going to say you mishandled this case. And insurance companies.
But how come they don't understand that they have put a special device that will create these things?
Because this is not what they learned. In fact, in school, what you learn is that can't happen. That's not the way the body heals. So I think one of the biggest challenges is going to be, there's two challenges. One is the science, which we're doing pretty good on, getting things like this to fix problems. But now we're going to have to educate not just the physicians,